Here we have another installment in our EP brush wire line. This is the Buggy Bugger. It's basically a woolly bugger, but without the traditional hackle used with a feather. We're using the EP brush. We're using a 1-inch Tarantula in green today, but you can use any combination that you see fit. So to start the flower, we're going to be using lead or lead-free wire. Like with most trimmers, you're going to be wrapping some lead wire or lead-free wire around about half the hook shank and moving it behind the bead to add a little weight to the streamer to help it get it down and add some movement as well. And then we'll be locking it in with some Zap-A-Gap and a nice thread dam to help keep everything in place. Once you get a nice taper on there in the body, kind of even out with thread, we're going to be moving that back to right before the bend of the hook. And that's going to be our marker for installing the Marabou as our tail. And I'm using about 2 pieces here and kind of lining up the tips and manipulate the feather to make sure everything looks good. And then we're going to tie it in place. And if you twist up your Marabou here and cut, you can make cleaner cuts rather than just having a bunch of fibers sticking out. And then we're going to make sure we get the back wraps all the way to our last line of our thread underneath the tail, so everything lines up. And here I'm using 3 or 4 pieces of fluorescent Chartreuse crystal flash. You can use any color combination you like. And here I'm using a 4-inch piece of Tinsel Chenille for the body. We're going to be tying this in on one side of the hook shank, and then when we get to our wire brush on the other side to help even out our tie-in. And we did end up putting a lot of bulk towards the back end of the fly here on the hook shank, so don't get too concerned about making it completely even. We can adjust for that when we move in the chenille here in a few seconds. And I always like to throw in a half hitch here just for good measure to help secure everything in before we start wrapping. And you can help to even out the unevenness of the body underneath by overlaying some of your wraps here and keeping them nice and tight. You can see how much smoother that body is now and level with those wraps. And then we're going to make sure we got this nice and locked in before we do our EP brush. And you can kind of play with this as you wrap your brush in. The tighter the wraps and the closer they are together, the more dense the fly is going to look. So if you want to have more of the belly showing, you can spread out your wraps. But if you want more bulk added to your fly, you can do a lot tighter wraps based on your preference. Then you want to try to get as much of the fibers out of the way when you're wrapping here. It's a little easier said than done, but and then we're going to trim the crystal flash to the length of the Marabou. Especially when we're working with these pre-made brushes, you want to have a dubbing brush or at least a toothbrush to help get out any locked fibers that have been caught under anything else or on itself. Now I'm using UV resin on this, but you can use head cement or you can just do a series of whiff finishes as well to make sure everything's locked in at the very end. This just adds one extra layer of strength. And then about 5 to 10 seconds of the UV light and you are set to go. And there you have it, the Buggy Bugger, a new take on a classic woolly bugger.